Okay, everybody, it's now 4:30 and I think we're ready to start. So I'm Frances Meek from BNF, and I'm going to be hosting the webinar this afternoon. I also have my colleague Roy Ballum online as well, so he'll be answering any questions that you may have in the chat box and perhaps putting some links up. And we've also got Hayden Bettles and Joe Mann with us, and we're delighted that they've been able to join us today and actually support this webinar and actually show us some fantastic ideas how to use school gardens to explore where food comes from. So I'm just going to do a couple of housekeeping bits and pieces before we start. So the webinar is being recorded and will be available on Food Fact of Life tomorrow, hopefully. If you've got any questions, please type them in the chat box, and Hayden and Joe can perhaps answer them as we go along. And as I said, Roy will be putting up various links during the webinar as well. And do please also make sure that you've set your chat box to panelists and attendees, and that will mean that everybody can get to see your questions and the comments. At the end of the webinar, you'll be redirected to a short online evaluation. It should only take you about a minute to complete, and we're always very grateful for the feedback that we receive from people that attend our webinars and our other training events. And at the end of it, you'll be directed to a downloadable certificate, and then that can be downloaded. You can add your name to it and then print it out for your records. Just a note though, if you're on a tablet or on a phone, you may not automatically be redirected, but don't worry, we'll be sending the evaluation link out to all attendees tomorrow, so you will receive that. So let's get going. So as I said, we're going to be doing this afternoon a webinar about using school gardens to explore where food comes from. And we're going to be covering quite a nice range of different topics as part of the presentations this afternoon. So going to be looking at the benefits of establishing and using a school garden, thinking about it for growing food in your school and for your school, planning your gardening activities around the growing seasons and school year, encouraging wildlife to your school garden, using what you grow in seasonal recipes, getting the whole school community involved. We're also going to be sharing some links to Food Fact of Life resources, and then also some suggestions for further sources of information that will help you in establishing your school gardens. So we've actually got two presentations this afternoon that Hayden and Joe have recorded for us. So I'm just going to play those now, and then at the end we will go through some of the resources as I mentioned, and then a short question and answer session with Joe and Hayden at the end of the webinar. So just 1 second and I will start the presentations.
Hello, so my name's Hayden Bettles. I am a food education and outdoor lead here at Armitage C Primary School in Manchester, and I'm going to be talking with you today about obviously how we use our school gardens to explore where food comes from. So a little bit about me. I've been working here at the school for about 6 years. I've been in charge of food for that time as well, head of food for 6 years. But prior to that, I was a chef. I worked in Michelin and multi-rosette standard restaurants from London up into Lancashire. Obviously, like I said, I've been head of food at Armitage for 6 years, kind of a role rarely seen in primary schools. I have been on the advisory and working groups for the BNF, so we've got a good connection with them. So I'm on their advisory board for both teaching food education in primary schools and also teaching food education in England. I've been in the outdoor role for about 18 months, but obviously with the connection with food, I've been involved much longer. It's just the opportunity that came about 18 months ago to actually lead and be more practical outside. And I'm also an ambassador for Love British Food, of an organisation that's really passionate about promoting British. So that's a little bit about me. So we've got some multiple growing areas within school. We've got the allotment, as you can see on the screen. So we've got 18 raised beds, which we split in half, so we've got 36 sections. We've also got the polytunnel, what you can see in the picture as well. We've got about 20 fruit trees in our orchard, and we've also very, very lucky to work with an organisation where we can grow hydroponically, so grow in water without the need of soil. Just some of the images there of the crops that have gone in the ground this year. You can see some potatoes in your top left, going over to your bush, beans in the middle, and your climbers just below it, and then obviously the kale to the right above the logo. So first of all, establishing an area, especially if you don't have an area. Just a couple of things to think about is kind of looking around your school and seeing if there's an area that doesn't get used, or an area that could be more practically used for your growing area. And obviously with that, thinking about kind of, does it get the sunlight that you're going to need for the growing area as well? Obviously, if it's quite shady, you're going to struggle to grow in that area. So, but then if the area you've identified doesn't get sunlight, kind of what things could you possibly put in place to ensure you do get some sunlight? You think about kind of the human traffic that might be going near that area. So as you can see, I've put on there the yellow markers, and that's basically where the parents come through to our school to drop off and collect their children. As you can see, they walk straight past the allotment, and we get that kind of engagement with the parents and with visitors. It's the kind of the first thing they see when they walk into school, apart from the car park, is this kind of amazing allotment, and it gives them that real buzz straight away. Something to think about as well for your area is if you're going to kind of dig down, or if you're going to plant up. So if you're we grow in raised planters because we're built on an old factory site, so obviously there's no nutrients in the ground, and the ground's just full of bricks. But maybe if you've got some really, really good soil, you might turn your soil over and grow in the ground rather than, and obviously, like I said before, above the ground. Thinking kind of accessibility wise, kind of what access do you have to the site? You know, have you got some learners that are in a wheelchair or restricting mobility? Could they access the area? So it's kind of an area for everybody, not just obviously for those who can reach the sites. And also thinking about where kind of your water source is going to come from. You can see from the image on your screen that there's a red dot next to the white building, so that's where our main water source is, that's where our outdoor tap is, and we have a hose pipe long enough to kind of reach the allotment. And hopefully in this next coming year, we're kind of having an automated watering system put in, so it's far more easier. And then obviously there's maintaining the area. So, you know, you need to think about if there's somebody who's able to kind of water the area daily, you know, if needed, because you look at the weather, we've not had rain here for 3 to 4 weeks now. So there's that need to water daily or every other day. So is there somebody who's going to be able to water daily? Is there somebody who's going to be able to weed the beds? Because you want to probably minimize the amount of chemicals and weed killer you're spraying on your growing area. So you need to think about kind of if somebody's there to weed the beds. How often will somebody check up on the area? So it could be a difference between 2 days of something going to seed or something not going to seed, or something being ripe and something being overripe. Or so you need to, how often will be able to someone to check the area? How often will somebody be able to go out there and do tasks? And this is also linked to your growing. So things like staking plants or netting the plants. So we had to go net the beans the other day, but I could only do that because that's my directed time. So if you're growing beans, for example, would somebody able to go out there and stake the beans and net them all up? And then think about kind of the plants you will grow and the attentions they might need. You talk about tomatoes or things like that. You know, tomatoes need a little bit of attention to make sure that they're growing to full capacity, basically. So they need a little bit of attention. So is somebody able to give these crops what you're growing the attention they need, or do you need to kind of think of something else to grow? Could be things like clearing and sweeping the paths. Obviously, you know, you don't want obstacles on the floor, and when there's wind about and you put that in with an allotment or growing space, things can get blown over the paths, and also kind of making and keeping the area as safe as possible. Obviously, it's a growing area. There are some risks with it, with the stakes and things like that. But is there somebody able to go and check on it and make sure that it's safe before children go in that area? Something I wanted to also speak about with the maintaining aspect is the watering aspect. So the question is kind of, do the plants need watering in the first place? We talked earlier about somebody needs to water the plants, and we said daily, especially in this weather. But there's a few things that can help you to minimise kind of wasting water, so to speak. So we've got a moisture sensor here at our school where we check obviously the moisture of the soil to see where that is, and obviously that will tell us if the ground needs watering or not. So we'll always check the soil with this moisture sensor just to see if the ground does need watering before we actually water. And also the rain gauge, being in Manchester, we get a lot of rain, so it's definitely worth our money, but this will tell us how much rain has fallen over a set period. So for us, we check it every morning. We take children out every morning to go and see how much rain has fallen, and we jot it down and we put it into graphs and things like that, and from that we can also able to tell how much water to provide the plants. And basically what you're doing here is just saving unnecessary watering. You know, the top might be a little bit dry, but if you go 2 inches deep or 1 inch deep, the soil still might retain its moisture. So it's about thinking about kind of, do your plants need water in the first place? I think that moisture sensor was around £20–30, and you know, it tells us the temperature, it tells us the pH, it tells us the moisture. It's a really good tool to have, and I think the rain gauge is about £9 as well. Another great cross-curricular link with kind of graphs and maths, and also kind of geography and things like that. Could you collect the water? So obviously we have water butts around school, and something we're thinking about next year, especially with COP26, is how we can be more water friendly and use the hose pipe less. But you know, thinking about where you could possibly set up areas in school where you can collect water, and obviously how easy that is to get to your growing site. And obviously most schools do eco schools or something similar, and how you could link that with your eco school. So because we've got these, we're ticking an objective for eco school, so it's thinking about how you can reuse what we already have in an area, and thinking about it that way as well. So that's kind of minimizing watering, and obviously using resources that are all already there. Now, what to do if you don't have a growing space? Now, you could grow in bags. So you can see in the left photo, we grow in bags in soil. So we've got the potatoes in bags. It's actually much more easier for us to grow potatoes in bags than it is to grow them in the raised planters, even though we've got plenty, because we can literally just pull them out, tip it out, take the potatoes, and then we're done, rather than, because our planters are kind of just short of 1 metre high, you've got to kind of get in and dig up kind of thing, which is great, but then you don't get them all, and then the next year when you've got broccoli in there or whatever, you get potatoes through them. But it's also great because they don't take it, those bags of potato. I've got the potatoes in there, what you can see, which is 5 bags, and they would normally take up around 4 planters. So you can see that we're kind of saving space. We're not using unnecessary resources that we don't need to. And it's also great if you don't have the area, you can just line a couple of bags along kind of a fence or a wall and just let them kind of get to it, basically. And also something what we tried this year was growing on, you know, vertically up a fence. I've been doing kind of some work with Manchester Healthy Schools, and obviously I knew this was coming up, and we wanted to try this. I think it cost us about £20 for everything, so for the gutter, for the wood, for the bolts and all that jazz. And basically what you've got in there is you've got tomatoes, and in the other one you've got strawberries, and this is just a trial for this year. But I mean, we'd normally put tomatoes in hanging baskets and let them droop down, and this is essentially what we're doing here. We're just letting the tomatoes develop and then hopefully droop over, and we can have some gorgeous cherry tomatoes. But something, you know, this is something what you can think about if you don't have a growing area. Every school has got a fence, and obviously if you've got somebody able to, you can attach a gutter to the fence. You can grow kind of multiple crops in this. Obviously, you can go a bit deeper with the gutter if you need to. But yeah, things like, we tried the tomatoes and we got told it'd never work, and we've got tomatoes in flower and tomato plants in fruit now. So we're actually doing really, really well and better than what people thought we would. But I mean, you things like, you could probably put your beans in there, you could probably put peas in there, you could probably put some kind of radish in there, because obviously they don't go very deep. Your courgettes, maybe you could try a pumpkin. So it's definitely something worth thinking about if you don't have an area, is kind of setting up areas on a fence and seeing if you can grow that way. As I mentioned before, we've also got the hydroponics. So this is basically where we grow without without soil. We grow with water, and we basically add nutrients into the water. We've grown crops such as we grow crops such as lettuce and things like that for a quick crop. So it normally takes about 5 weeks for a full growth. Or as you can see, we've also grown things like tomatoes from here. And last year we did wheat. So last year we did a science experiment with a farmer. So he was growing wheat in his field, and we grew wheat in our allotment, but we also grew wheat in our hydroponics. And we compared kind of from his field to our allotment to our hydroponics, kind of what all the plants look like, the age of maturity and things like that. And it was a great science experiment. So when you're thinking about what to grow, we rely heavily on donation of seeds sometimes, and also kind of the self-sufficient aspect to know. Joe, who's going to be speaking in a minute, he lets his plants go to seed, whereas we don't. We kind of we link up with people and we get donations of seeds, and we get different things each year, which kind of makes it more interesting. And we like to grow different coloured things. So this year we've got kind of yellow green beans, for example, and runner beans, and we've got purple carrots, and we've got golden and candy beetroot. So we like to grow different coloured vegetables as well. So it's kind of worth thinking about what seeds you do have if you've got a donation of seeds, or what seeds you plan to buy. When do they need to be planted? When are they ready for harvest? And obviously, where will they grow best in your growing area? At our school, we've got an area that's quite shaded, and we've got an area that's quite sunny. So obviously the plants that require more sunlight are obviously located there, and the plants that don't really mind are located in the shadier part. But planning what to grow is kind of the biggest thing. We normally go for the unusual, so the white radishes and the purple radishes, and again the candy and the golden beetroot, because it not only teaches the children about kind of vegetables and growing and what they can grow, but it also teaches them about different varieties and different tastes, and obviously different textures and things like that. So we're very lucky that we can go down that path. And you'll often find that if you're going to buy these, that places will do them for dead cheap. And if you look at companies, they will also offer this type of seeds. But so what we always look to do is we look to kind of harvest. We like to harvest in July time, obviously when the children are leaving for summer, but we also like to harvest in kind of October time. Now you'll see what we do is we teach very detailed food here, and obviously we go into kind of when the food's in season, when British foods are in season, when it's ready to harvest. And part of year 3's lesson is knowing when the food's ready to harvest and different harvesting techniques. So obviously you know, you've got your cutting, you've got your shaking and things like that, you've got your picking, you've got your digging out, combining, things like that. So we actually go out into the allotment, and part of their food lesson about how food is harvesting, they go out and harvest their the crops in the allotment. And also year 4, they look at, we work with year 4 because they look at this document here about what's in season, and then we work out when we're going to plant what seeds we have. And obviously that's part of their lessons about kind of British foods and what we grow in this country. So the children in year 4 make it like a growing calendar, and they'll plan when we need to sow all these seeds, and when we need to harvest, and when we need to do X, Y, and Z. So it's great to kind of link in with your lessons as well, not just obviously using it as an allotment and a growing space, but using it to kind of link in with the lessons, what you're teaching in the classroom, and that's kind of what we do. And then we've also got encouraging wildlife into the school grounds. So it was a big thing for us this year, where obviously when I came in post, that we looked around, we didn't even have any birds. We're located on one of the busiest roads in and outside of Manchester, and there's no wildlife. There was genuinely no wildlife. You know, when everybody goes on that science hunt and they go looking for bugs, and we had, like, you know, you got your wood lice, and that was it. So what we decided to do is we got a grant from the Tree Council, and we were fortunate enough to plant over 75 metres of native hedge, so over 450 trees. And basically that will kind of absorb pollution and stop the noise pollution as well, which is kind of what we wanted, because the site's very open. But it'll also encourage the birds and also help feed them over the winter, and a place to kind of gather sticks for nests, and a place for them to hide as well, but also a place for other wildlife to collect. And if you can see just on the right side, the right picture, where the billboard is, we've also planted a working woodland up there as well. And already we're starting to see more, but we're starting to see birds for once in our school grounds, which is great. But we've also got squirrels coming into the grounds and things like that. So it makes the hard work and the planting all worthwhile. Also linking in with the encouraging wildlife, we're about to sow 300 square meters of wildflowers. So a wildflower meadow actually absorbs more carbon than a forest, and that's because every time you cut it down, it grows again, and as it grows, it absorbs more carbon, and then you cut it down, and then it grows again. So we're instead of planting loads and loads of trees in this area, we wanted to plant a wildflower meadow, and that's going to have specific seeds in it, and those seeds again are going to encourage wild birds and feed wild birds over the winter. But they're also going to help us increase pollinators into the site, because obviously we've got the allotment further up, and we want to obviously increase pollinators and birds and all kinds of wildlife into the site. So we've not quite done that yet. It's been kind of too dry to do it. We needed, for the first time in Manchester, we actually prayed for rain, and it's still not come. So it's probably going to have to wait till next year. Again, we'll get all the site ready, and we'll sow it again next year. But we're going to be planting a wildflower meadow here, and it also saves costs. It saves costs on the mowing as well, and it's an awkward area to get to because it's in the car park, and it's kind of it's disused. There's nothing to go in there. So we're hoping it's going to be this area that encourages wildlife into the site, and also a place where children can go and use for their science lessons, a place where they can go and explore and see what's in there, the different flower varieties, and obviously the different wildlife. We've also received funding to change the front of the school. So that was linked with the fund for the wildflower meadow. So we've actually got a fund to transform the whole front of school, which I'll show you in a minute. So we bought quite a lot of pollinating flowers for the front of school. So as you can see in the top left, it was quite dark and dingy, and in the top right, obviously there's quite, it wasn't very pleasant to walk in. And you can see at the bottom images that we're starting to get a lot more colour into the site, and we are seeing more pollinators on the site, and that's something that we really wanted to encourage, again with the allotment behind it. And obviously with the bee population decreasing, we wanted to really be active on that. We work with a local beekeeper as well. So he tells us kind of what to plant and where to plant it, and how we can kind of increase population in the area, because obviously with it being so built up, there's not that much opportunity. So now we're working with the local councillors and the local council, the local residents. They can also grow kind of wildflowers, so we're giving them seeds as well, so they can plant. So hopefully this area that's kind of grey and not much going on and very built up can hopefully be this blue, this blossom of colour. And then also we've got the birds. So we've set up 3 feeding stations around school in different locations. So you can see on the map there, the red dots are where we've set up bird feeding stations. The plan is next year to set up a further kind of 3, maybe more around the back end of the site. Obviously where it says M12 there, where it says our postcode, that's obviously still our site. So we want to have some more around there. And as we say, we're really seeing a great population of different birds coming into the school grounds. I mean,
hi, my name's Joe Mann. I'm the head of food preparation and nutrition here at Torquay Girls Grammar School, and I'm talking to you today about using school gardens to explore where food comes from. This is my take on it, my experience, a bit of my story here at Torquay Girls Grammar School, and how we've gone about things, and the benefits and some of the tips that we can give you from what we've done, and hopefully help you along your way with the presentation. So the context, we're going to look at the benefits of establishing and using a school garden in your school. Establishing a school garden for growing food in school. We're talking about going from something that could be really, really small, such as herbs on the windowsill in your food kitchen, right the way up to reclaiming a whole athletics field, which is what we've done here, along with the shot put, the long jump. We've taken over the whole lot to build in orchards, 6 massive vegetable patches we've grown there, and a second orchard now. So we're looking at everything in between that and where you might be going on your journey. And we're going to look at planning your gardening activities. So we're looking at how you're going to plan that, how you're going to put it in place, how you can do those activities around the school calendar to fit with what you need to get the most out of this for you and your schools. We're looking at linking it to the curriculum. So we're looking at linking it to food preparation and nutrition, and how you might be able to bring that growing back into the classroom, so you can start to utilise all that you've grown, all that you've harvested, and put it into practice with some finished food items, and hopefully some high skilled finished food items as well. We want to also give you the opportunity to involve the whole school with this cooking and with the growing to the cooking activities. And then finally, we're going to give you some resources there that might be useful in helping you along your journey to get to growing food in school. Okay, so let's start with the benefits, and we're going to be talking quite broad here, broad brushstrokes when we're talking about this. We're addressing the global environmental concerns. Yes, your students undoubtedly, like yourself, will be talking about this at the moment, and this is one way in which your students can get involved and address those in the school environment. The mental health aspect, we've got a photo here during Mental Health Awareness Day. It's why they're all there wearing their yellow tops here. It does help with the self-confidence, the teamwork, the communication between students. And obviously they're outdoors, they're doing activities outdoors, which in itself is helping. And there's the outdoor learning that goes with that. We be able to access some real life resources. So we're not only just looking at resources, PowerPoints here about where food's grown and how it's grown, but you can actually access some real life resources by having a garden close to hand, by having your own growing of food at hand. You've got there some resources that actually change throughout the year as well. So you can revisit it, but also throughout the year, you're going to be getting different experiences that you can give to those students. It's a way of delivering these fun and engaging lessons. Yeah, let's get the students involved in the lessons and get them having a fun. We want food to be up there as the most enjoyable subject there is, and this is one way that you can do that, and I've certainly found that from the students that I've taught. But you're also an opportunity to promote the department. So it's not only just about fun and inspiring lessons, but being able to promote it so that ultimately you can look at getting more people involved, maybe at GCSE level and further with the course. So we can use it as a promotional tool. And you can see here on the board there, I've got some of the notice boards around school with the pictures of the girls who have been growing food in school, who've been harvesting the foods in school, and then then using that as part of our lesson. So on the bottom left there, you can actually see us having a lesson outdoors by the vegetable patches as well. So there's a huge amount of benefit involved in growing in school. Now, how do we go about doing this? There's a lot involved in establishing this, and it's a long-term project, this one. This is not just a termly, this is not just a yearly, but we're looking at years. So we need to make sure we've embedded this school garden into the whole fabric of the school. We need to involve the whole school in the community in the planning. So getting involved in the science, getting involved in your grounds team, getting involved everybody else that's in your school that might be involved. Get involved, obviously, your head, your senior management, some governors as well, in what you're planning to do. You want buy-in from everywhere here to make this a real impact and to make it a lasting project for you. We're going to be setting up and running a sustainable garden club. Now, I found that was absolutely paramount to this. It wasn't just about it being beneficial. This is what led it. So we set up a growing food group, our own sustainable gardening club within the school. Now, pre-pandemic, this was, and as we're going into post-pandemic, this is a lot easier with a huge variety of years. And actually that in itself had the benefits of being able to mingle between the years to create our gardening club in school. During the pandemic, slightly more restricted. We were in one bubble, so we had 1 year, and in our case it was the year 8s that were involved in that. So we had to be careful, a little bit more clever with how we did that one. But coming out of that, hopefully we should be back to where we were before. So getting all years involved in creating this growing food group, our own sustainable gardening club. So getting that in place. Starting off small. So we did start off small. We started off very much with a small potted area where we were growing herbs, and then built it up. So starting with 2 or 3 foods. So we then moved on to the veggie patches. So we started digging up parts of this field that weren't being used and putting in the veggie patches and building that up, and then starting off small with the vegetables that we planted. So we're starting with potatoes and carrots and peas and beans, and then we started to expand upon that So the veggie patches have expanded, and so has what we've grown around it, and how the whole place has taken on a brand new life. It really has been amazing to see how the whole thing has snowballed and created this much larger experience for the whole school. Yeah, remember that an area for growing fruit and vegetables or herbs maybe established in a garden of any size. So I don't want anyone to be put off by what we talk about and what we're about to show you, some of these pictures that you might see here. You can start off small, and we did start off small. We'll say a small pot with a variety of herbs. Then we moved up, gradually building out. So start off small and then build it up. Don't try going back big to start with until you've got all the foundations in there. You've got the school buy-in, you've got all the different departments buy-in, you've got the students buy-in through, you've got a dedicated group of people involved. So you need to get all of this in place and then build it. Is how I found it the best way. Remember that an area for growing fruit and vegetables, maybe established in a separate plot, or it can be integrated. So you can, if you haven't got a separate area, that you haven't got a separate pot, you could actually integrate the herbs into all areas where you've already got some floral areas. You might have some floral beds that you could put the herbs into. So when you're establishing it, those first few steps, rather than necessarily going in there with sleepers and starting to build straight away, start to gradually establish it. And it does require this establishment. It does require you to put the foundations in place before you start with the growing in a big way with school. All right, let's go on to the planning. So let's talk about what do we need to put in place before that. Well, what did we look at putting in place prior to getting to the stage where we are now with, say, 6 massive beds, a couple of huge orchards, and what did we have to put in place and what have we had to think about? So don't let the where you put and you locate your gardens be restrictive. So the food room proximity and distance shouldn't be a barrier. So this might have a lovely space right at the other end of the school for it, but you need to be able to manage that space. You need to be able to get the maximum out of it. I mean, ideally, you want to be taking those students right to the patches, getting the vegetables, getting the fruit, bringing it back to the classroom and cooking with it. Now, you can't do that if it's miles away. So think about the locality of it. And also, when you're thinking about managing it and looking after it, you need to be thinking again about the locality of it within the school grounds. Now, when we're talking about locality, also think about your neighbours. Now, we're not going to be growing massive trees here. You might be growing some orchards. You might be growing something that might be, 3 or 4 meters high, but you're not growing anything that's huge here. But it's still worth looking at the impact that this might have on your neighbours and around the school. We're talking about neighbours as in actual external to the school that you might want to think about. So we spoke to the neighbours. We let them know what we're planning to do. Before that, they were just looking on a piece of open grass. Now they're looking at something with hedgerows, lots of edible hedgerows. They're looking at things with orchards and trees in. They're looking at huge vegetable patches with growing going on inside those. So it's worth having them in mind. Now, also think about the student activity. We're in a school, so and we're a school outdoors. So let's think about where the activity is going to be taking place. Think about PE here. Think about ball games. You do not want your wonderful vegetable patch with a football going straight through the middle of it. You don't want tennis balls firing left, right and centre through your wonderful blossom of your fruit trees. So think about the activities of the school and when you're thinking about the locality of where you're placing this one and how that might affect things. Now, you're also going to need some adequate source of water. You're going to need to, especially if it's an orchard, you're going to need to spend the first couple of years really drenching these trees. They're going to need a good looking after for the first couple of years. But you're going to need water for watering all your fruit and vegetables as well in the beds. So you need a water source. So what we've now got to the point of doing, we did have a little water butt on the side of a shed, so we were collecting that, and the students were going down with watering cans and watering from that. We've got to the stage now where we've got these enormous industrial big tanks now that we're collecting the rainwater off the tops of the school, and we're using that for irrigation. So we've got these, you can see here on the couple of them here that are actually being used. We've got post pipes from these that lead down to the shed, that lead down to the vegetable patches, and they also lead down to the orchards for irrigating the apples. So you need to have some way of being able to get water to them. So now, starting off small, that could just be a tap and a watering can outside of your classroom, but going bigger, how are you going to facilitate that? How are you going to make sure that's going to be in place? And again, you don't want it to be, you want the ground to be able to be well drained as well. You don't want it to be waterlogged. So the same is true the other way around. You don't want to be going into an area that when it pours hard is like a quagmire, it's like a marshed area. You don't want that either. And again, we've got these two different elements here. You want it to be open for sunlight, because obviously you want the sunlight for the plants to be able to grow, but you don't want it too exposed either. You don't want it overshadowed. So there's this, you've got to marry up these, you've got to work these out, what's going to work for you and your school when you're looking at the location. Is it going to be overshadowed by a tall building? Is it going to be too exposed if it's out on a limb? Thinking about where you're planning and where your growing is going to be. Now, when we're talking about shelter and making sure it's not too exposed, we're not just talking about the plants here. We also need to think about some shelter for the students, because it's hey, we're in wonderful Great Britain here, and I'm looking out the window here and it's pouring hard at the moment. So we still need to have some sort of shelter out there. So we've got our clubhouse, so you can see the photos there, our clubhouse for our growing food group. That's our little shed we've got going on down there that we have put in. That's also storage for the tools that you'll need as we're going along. So you can see our watering cans are in there. We've got spades and we've got our forks in there as well. Things that you might need in there, gloves as well. And we also store outdoor shoes. So think about those sort of things, because if it's a muddy day and you want the students up there to you for yourselves, and you want to be making sure that the gardens are looking great and you want to be weeding them, you need somewhere for them to put their school shoes in, so they can change into their outdoor shoes, and also somewhere to hang up some outdoor coats. And because again, if it's raining hard, you don't want them traipsing back in through school with muddy shoes and wet coats. So have somewhere like that to facilitate this. If it's raining, it's well worth thinking about shelter for the students as well. Think about spacing of what you're growing. Now, if you're starting off small in a small pot, you're kind of okay. Maybe you've got 75 centimetre pot to start with your growing, something that sort of size. That's great. Think if you're doing an orchard, now even if you're planting small trees, you can see the ones that we started planting there in the middle of the picture. But we need to still leave a 4 meters distance between them, because you've got the tree above, but you've got the roots below, and because of that you're going to need enough space around you so that when they do grow, and this is a long-term project, remember, that you've got that space for them to grow properly and be able to mature out. So we've still got 4 meters, so you need to think about that when you're looking at your spaces if you're thinking about an orchard for your growing. Planting foods, yeah, no, obvious, it might seem really obvious, but when you're planting your foods, you need to be doing it within the school calendar. So you need to have foods that can be harvested by July, or they're going to survive through the summer holidays through to September. So think about that when you're planting. And we've got a rotating, we've got a number of things that we plant and harvest, plant and harvest. So we've got, we put it throughout the year. So we've got different things. We're always harvesting different things, and we're always sowing and then again harvesting, sowing, harvesting. So we've got something. But then when it comes to summer holidays, we know what we haven't harvested already is going to last till September. Otherwise, we have it all harvested just up to July. So think about that when you're growing, and that again will have an impact on the space that you require and what the spaces you're going to need for those individual plants to go into. And then what we'll do is we'll make the recipes around that. So we'll actually go out, have a look at what's in season, go out and look what's we're going to be picking, come back to the classroom and we'll alter the recipes, or we'll pick specific recipes, and then we'll come on to recipes in a bit with that. But don't be afraid, having said that, you know, you've got this particular window to grow. What I would say, start with foods that people are obviously going to eat to start with when you're planning it. Don't be afraid to take a few risks about what ingredients you might plant as well, because I always find it's really good. Maybe it's the dad in me, but the growing students may not be familiar with, and get them to prepare, cook and taste them, and then get them into the new taste. So I do try and put a few things in, like the New Zealand yam. You might have seen those ones before. Tiny little pinky coloured ones that look like potatoes, odd shape, odd colour, and it's, you know, they've got this idea in their head what they're going to taste like. They're like, no, I'm not going to taste that. I don't know what it looks like. It looks a bit odd. But it's worth taking a few little risks on there and just getting something they're unfamiliar with. But once they've cooked it and tasted it, they'll be sweet, juicy, and they can get trying new tastes. Okay, that's planning. Linking to our curriculum. Okay, so linking our curriculum. So let's linking it back to our food. And we said there some of the foods that you might do. So we're introducing students to a wide variety of fruit and vegetables. Hopefully that's the context of what we are trying to do here. You're going to be educating them about healthy choices in diets. And as part of that, we're using fresh produce to make healthy recipes. Don't forget, we want to use as much of this fruit and veg in there. We do want to create an excitement for cooking, this love of food, as it says in the curriculum. So we can do that through this growing project that you hopefully will be undertaking, or have us begun to take already. So what do I cook? Well, that kind of depends on what there is, but there's some really good vehicles for being able to put the fruit and veg into. So pasties are brilliant, sweet or savoury pasties, for trying out using up the vegetables that you might be growing in your, whether it's potatoes, onions, garlic, carrots, all of these things. And then maybe if you've got excess, then freezing them off so that you can then use that again. Pizzas, vegetable pizzas. Great one to use this up. Vegetable soups. Again, I use a variety of those in there with the potatoes in there. Put a little bit of cheese in there as well, but a variety of different ones in there, with its carrots and potatoes to the base of your soups there are really nice ones. Curries with vegetables in there, but also with fruits. So don't be afraid to put fruits into curries. I know it sounds an odd one, but I love a sweet curry with fruits in there as well. So again, another vehicle for using up these fruit and vegetables in different ways. And obviously we're using up some skills here as well. So we've got the pasties with your pastry making, we got your pizzas with your bread making, and then you've got other ones, the curries with a reduction sauce going on there. Vegetable roasty patties, so you can see the pictures of them here. You can see my onions down there, and then the potatoes, and then we made them into like a kind of a hash brown style roasty patties. That they love them there. And again, they're just collecting a bucket of potatoes, collecting some of the onions, and they can actually see where they're coming from. That food provenance, food sustainability aspect, it's really works well there. Okay, what other ones have we got there? Vegetable scones. Yes, I like to put vegetables into scones. I love carrot scones, carrot biscuits, those sort of things. So we put them into scones there. So you can talk about rubbing in, cutting in, and aeration and shortening. So you can get some skills in there as well. Fruit pies, obviously, yeah. Fruit tarts, so again, you can not just go with a short crust pastry, but you can do an advanced pastry there by making it rich pastries as well. Chutneys, which is a great one when you're looking at storing food, and you can talk about food storage and increasing the life of it. Also pasta, think about it with pasta. So we've got a vegetable gnocchi with a pasta bacon there, so we can make the gnocchi, make the pasta, potato pasta in there. And then you can bake that in with vegetables in there. So you've got your tomatoes in there, and your onions and your garlic, and you can put them all into there and cook those off. All of those recipes, there are recipes for all of those, and you can see that on the YouTube. Look for Fun Kitchen. You'll find me teaching those in class with the recipes. They're all free. Feel free to use them on the YouTube there. And ultimately, when we're looking at linking to the curriculum, we're looking at food provenance and food sustainability. We're bringing it right the way back, because then any food waste, any peelings, vegetable peelings that aren't used, we then take back to the garden to compost, which comes back to our planning again about where do you put the location of your school gardens. You don't want to be traipsing miles down the end, especially if it's raining, to put it. So you want to be able to have it fairly close to where you are teaching, so you can use that as part of your educational teaching resources. Okay, talking education, let's think about the whole school community here. And you can see our school nurse there loving the carrots that we're cooking in our school garden. But we're looking at the whole school approach to food. So it's really important to get buy-in for such a large project as this, that we get the whole school board approach. We get the whole school buy-into this. We link it to the school caterers. So speak to your school caterers. So we have a group of students and teachers that links all of this together. So we're talking to each other about what we're doing and how we're growing it and what's being grown and how they link with one another. And then cross-curricular links within the subjects as well. So obviously you've got your science with your life cycles and biodiversity, because you've got to think about it. It's not only are we creating this wonderful space for growing food, but we actually do have little bug hotels that we've got there. We've got 4 of those up there, plus we've got one that we've made with the log piles there as well, to create this wonderful space. So you've got a huge amount of biodiversity. We've got to create our shelter around the vegetable patches now. We have hedgerows we've planted of edible hedgerows, and lots in there with thornless blackberries and different foods going on in there as well. We've also got the bushes of the gooseberries there as well, and so there's, with all this growing, not just in the fruit and veg area, but in the orchards and in the hedgerows that we planted around it, there's a huge amount of biodiversity. You should see the bees that we have up there. It's wonderful up there. Maths, data analysis. There's a huge amount of data analysis, not just looking at what we grow, when we grow, how we grow, but being able to do analysis there of the budgeting of what we do with that as well. English as well. Yeah, we've had the English up there writing poems and coming up to the garden, and we've got a nice table and benches up there as well, so they can sit out for doing art as well. And geography, the links, obvious links there with the food miles, and the fact that our food miles are being reduced by using a lot of the ingredients that we're growing out there as well. Then we're bringing the scraps from the ingredients, and that's going back out there for the composting. And we leave some of our foods that we've grown out there to go to seed, so we can use that for the seeds to go back in, so we don't have to pay for new seeds. So there's lots there, involving the parents, governors, local residents, outdoor agencies, organisations, programmes. The DFE are great because it's a volunteering programme, so we can use that one as part of what we do for getting everybody else involved. A lot of opportunity for students, school communication, for student newsletters, for students to be able to communicate more, and they can use the garden as a way of being able to communicate more through newsletters, talk about the environment, talking about what they're doing. So there's loads of different ways of getting the community involved. We've got here our year 11s here. So our year 11s here are planting up to the levers. We've encouraged them as levers to be planting trees and adding to our orchard area, which is a great way again of involving other people into the community aspect of our school gardens. there. And also, I mean, we're talking about growing again and not having to spend money, but also offsetting it with school trips. So if you've got a school trip, offsetting some of the carbon footprint, maybe you're going out abroad, there's a big trip going to the school, but offsetting some of that, or maybe just going by coach, offsetting some of that carbon footprint of the school by more planting within the school. So there's money to come in from there. So by getting the parents involved, getting local residents involved, getting them to come in again, there's more opportunity for funding and getting more plants in, but also getting more money to buy new plants in as part of that. Right. Nearly done, everybody. Resources. Finally, resources. So there are a huge amount of fantastic resources on the Food Effect for Life website. As part of the BNF Food Effect for Life, there are resources to support all aspects of your planning when setting up your growing food club. I mean, I've listed loads there, from posters, planning sheets, and you can see a big picture there, which is a really good one. We're looking at tools and resources lists that you might need as part of your growing food club, but also your timetable about who's going out and watering, who's going to be doing weeding within your group. All of this is really important, and you've got all of that on the Food Effect for Life website. It's really great. The links there. Other organisations, there's organisations that will give you foods to grow your own potatoes. Is brilliant for that. They will actually send you packs of potatoes to grow, and you can actually, as well, obviously you can do that with your own potatoes, but ideally you want the potatoes that they give you. There's some lovely potatoes there that you've got. They'll give you that. They'll give you all the equipment, worksheets and resources to go with that. Garden Organic has got a great deal of resources. School Food Plan, loads of first-hand experiences about growing food in school and what works and how that's worked for them. There are other ones as well. The RHS campaign for school gardening is good. The Tree Council for delivering food trees to you. Lots of different resources out there that want to help you to create your own school garden. Thank you very much. That's been me, Joe Mann, talking about some of my experiences here at Torquay Girls Grammar School. I hope that's been useful for you. And if you've got any questions, please do get in contact.
Hello.
Hey, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, both Hayden and Joe. Some really wonderful ideas there. And it's really great just envisaging both of your schools and seeing what you do in your schools and the fantastic opportunities that your pupils have. But also it was great to see that you both explained how teachers and school communities can do it on varying scales. So as you say, it could be just looking at growing things on the classroom windowsill through to doing what you're doing in your school. So that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you. So I'm going to ask you to come in just a minute to see if we've got any questions. But beforehand, I just want to go through some of the resources we have available on Food Effect for Life. And Joe's actually mentioned these already, which is great. So we've got some new resources around setting up and establishing a growing club. So these are on the website and they're available for you to have a look at. And then we've also got some pupil resources, so lots of different resources on the website, but here's just a few that might be useful linking into what you're going to be doing in school. And then also I was thinking about the fact that you may be setting up a regular gardening club or growing club, and knowing that we're in the UK, the weather here isn't always great, so you need to be prepared for rainy day activities. So I was just having a think of some of the different things that we've got on Food Effect for Life that you might be able to use. So there's some just examples on the screen there, but we've also got a tasting guide for teachers just to be able to find out how to set up a tasting session. We've also got lots of information in the Where Food Comes From area, food commodities, and also recipes. Joe was talking about some of the fantastic recipes he makes in school, and we've also got lots of different recipe ideas on Food Effect of Life that you might find useful in your school. Joe also mentioned some other sources of information, and here's some that I found. So some of these provide free resources and support, so I thought they would be quite good to share with you this afternoon. And just a little bit about further training. So we've got some webinars coming up next week, actually. We've got a careers in catering and hospitality. That's particularly for opportunities for young people with additional needs. That's at 4:30 next Wednesday. And then we've got some practical food skills and recipe masterclasses, one in July, which is about artisan bread making, and then one in September, which is about cheese making. And then we have a date for your diary. It is this year, it's the 30th anniversary conference for Food a Fact of Life. Can't believe Food a Fact of Life has been around for 30 years. And we're celebrating with a UK conference on Saturday, the 9th of October. So do put that date in your diary, and you'll be able to hopefully join us and celebrate on that day. To find out more about our training, do have a look on the website, go to the training area, all the information is there. Also, if you'd like to find out firsthand when we've got new training available, do sign up for our PPD newsletter, and that will come out every couple of months or so, or when we've got something exciting to tell you. So the link for that is on this presentation, which will be shared with you tomorrow and also be available on the website. Now, I can see that there have been lots of comments on the chat, but I think that a lot of the questions have been answered as we go along. But I just wondered if both Joe and Hayden could just join me just for a moment. And there's a couple of things that I just like to ask you quickly.
Oh.
Hi.
Hello there. Yes.
That's brilliant. That's great. Thank you. So it was first of all just for Hayden very quickly. I know you've done some. Hi, Hayden. I know you've done some great work in your school around sunflowers, and we didn't have the opportunity to talk about that in your presentation. And I just wondered if you could tell everybody what you've been doing with sunflowers.
Yeah, so we've had a busy year with sunflowers. Obviously, we went down the environmental route. And the wildlife route, and something that we did was linking in with COVID, and a farmer we worked with, he did it last year, is we've actually sent out 160,000 sunflower kits to people in Manchester, and we've also got around 1,000 here at school, and we're going to be planting those, and hopefully the local area will be just this massive yellow, and it's great for pollinators as well, and obviously for the birds. So it's kind of a reminder of COVID and the dark times and looking through the light, but also it's great for the wildlife with the pollinators, and like I say, the bird, we're going to leave them dormant and the birds can feed on them over the winter.
That's great. I think that's a fantastic initiative. So I'm really, really pleased to hear that you've been able to do that. Joe, if you're there, I was just wondering if you could perhaps just give us sort of one top tip. You've given us some fantastic information in your presentation, but one top tip would be brilliant.
My top tip would be starting small and not being put off by anything you've seen today. But start off small, get like Hayden said, even if it's like a growing basket, using something like that, or even use a school fence. That's an amazing idea, Hayden. Really love that idea, the school fence. And I'm going to nab that one off you. But starting small and then working up from there. So don't be afraid. And ours was the same, just one single watering can and a couple of bays to start with. And we had some bits inside some flower beds as well before when we first started. And then you can start building and building and building to get to the stage where you've got something the size of what Hayden's got, or something similar in the secondary, like myself. So yeah, start small and don't be afraid to start small, and then gradually build it up and get a great team behind you when you build it up.
Great, thank you. That sounds really good. I've also seen something similar to what you've done, Hayden, with your fence, which is using plastic bottles, milk bottles and things like that. So that's quite cheap and easy to access. So I think that's a really good idea too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. And then actually one top tip from you as well, please, if you could.
You didn't prepare me for this one.
With children, you can think on your feet, Hayden.
The top tip, I think, is kind of keep going. So even if you've got the idea, and kind of people aren't behind you to start with, kind of like Joe said, start small, get it building up, get people interested and go for it. Many ideas we've had here at school, like the hydroponics, the head teacher rejected the idea about 6 times, and things like that. So it's kind of kind of keep going at it and keep going at the idea, and believe that you can do it and get people behind you and really go for it. And to answer Zoe's question here, the housing association built our allotment for us, so they built all the raised beds because it was part of their contract for community involvement. Now, if you've got a housing association near you, or a new housing development, part of the contract will be for community work, and actually part of that community work is they can actually build raised beds or kind of donate soil for you that way. So that's kind of how we funded ours.
We did slightly different with for ours. We were actually started to use carbon offsetting of school trips from a secondary school point of view as well to get some money. So the school trying to be as eco-friendly as they can. If they're going on long trips, if they're going, even especially if they're going on trips abroad, getting the school or the individual students to offset it by donating trees or giving money for trees and some of the hedgerows that we are getting planted at the moment.
Great. That's fantastic. Well, I think that's all the questions. Thank you, both of you. So just before I finish, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to present for us. I know that you're both very busy and you've got very busy schedules at school, so we really do appreciate it. I'm just going to finish off just talking about the evaluation, and then we'll sign off at the end. So thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. I hope you found it useful. The webinar has been recorded and will be available online tomorrow, hopefully. As I said at the beginning, we'd be really grateful if you could complete the online evaluation, and you will be hopefully directed to it as soon as I've ended the webinar. If not, you will be sent the evaluation link tomorrow. So thank you once again, Joe and Hayden. We really appreciate your support and the time that you've given us. And thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Have a very good evening. Bye-bye.